Welcome.
I'm just going to let you hold. Right. Welcome to Nintendo Voice Chat for the week of May 5th, 2016. I'm your host, Jose Otero, and this is IGN's Nintendo Show. Joining me once again is Per Schneider.
What's up, Jose?
And Andrew Goldfarb.
Happy Cinco de Mayo.
And that's not a holiday on this program because that's not real. But what is real is feedback.
Beer
a couple
is real.
things. A lot of things are real. First of all, if you want to support NVC, head on over to our YouTube channel. What is it? YouTube.com/Nintendo Voice Chat. One word, no spaces, no underscores. And you can check out videos. We actually put up some Let's Plays this week. We have more coming. We're going to talk about a couple of games today. And also, you can support us by leaving us a review like... Janie, that's a lot of zeros. 5. There's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, maybe 7 zeros on this. Who said on iTunes, "Great show. I listen devoutly every week. I use it as my main and basically only source to acquire all Nintendo news. I love hearing all the boys." Should call us boys.
Yeah. And occasionally girls.
And occasionally girls. They perfectly show they care and there's appreciation for the listeners and give the show a personal side, making listeners feel as if they know them. Great personalities. Thank you so much, Janie. We really appreciate that. Janie with a lot of zeros and a 5.
Thank you for checking out Nintendo Boys Chat.
Thank you for all those zeros. It's a zero for every amount they like the show.
And this week, the E3 2016 nightmare continues. This morning, a release from Nintendo announcing that this year at 9 a.m. Pacific time on Tuesday, June 14th, which would be the day that we will watch the video or the conference or whatever, Nintendo's going to kick off the show. Well, Nintendo of America president and COO Reggie Fils-Aimé is going to kick off the show by introducing Nintendo Treehouse Live, which will be dedicated to a day of live streamed gameplay of The Legend of Zelda. What? Just when you thought this couldn't get any worse, it continues. It's just cascading.
All right, but
each week.
Let's be clear. It is not a nightmare to be shown a new Zelda game. I want to make that clear.
It is a nightmare for it to be the only game.
However, that is the problem.
That is a half nightmare to me.
Okay, I didn't expect that, and also because
none of us did.
The part of the joy of The Legend of Zelda is discovering the game world, and like a day-long live stream sounds really scary to me, unless they've got like this E3 demo with 3 sections, right, where they have like the boss battle, the open field.
Well, let's not play around. That's what it'll be. It's going to be multiple sections of the demo that they're going to play through. None of it will be the beginning, presumably. Like Nintendo wouldn't spoil something like that.
Hopefully. So I'm
in
hopeful.
The past they haven't. I'm faithful that they will.
Which means then it'll be kind of like they'll play a section and they'll bring on Miyamoto or Aonuma and they'll go through it again, right? And so there'll be repetition of footage, which that's fine.
See, that's the thing.
But if it's a whole day giving away a ton of stuff, I'd be very, very sad.
Hang on. So I don't think they are repeating whatever these demos are. I think so. Typically, that's been the case with Treehouse Live. If you've watched Treehouse Live in the past, and Andrew, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Oh no,
I'm sorry, but if you've watched Treehouse Live in the past, you know that these demos do repeat. Last year, for example, Treehouse Live was the only place you could see the real Metroid Prime Federation Force. That demo that they played on there, the not Blast Ball demo, the only place you could watch it was Treehouse Live. Tokyo Mirage Sessions, when it had a different name, you saw that on Treehouse Live.
Sharpify.
Those things, it was called Sharpify at the time. And you saw demos for Mario Maker, you saw demos for Star Fox, etc. But you're right, they did repeat. I don't think this sounds like it would repeat. I think this is going to be a day-long thing. They're just going to run with it, but they're not going to show too much.
It also could be a kind of a combination of what you guys are saying, right? It could be an hour of the equivalent of running around Hyrule Field, and then Aonuma sits down and talks for a little while without footage, and then it goes to the equivalent of fighting a Goma, and then it goes back to Miyamoto talking.
Yeah,
I can see them taking 3 hours and spreading it across 6 hours, basically.
Which
that's still a lot, though. I don't know.
And a fan doesn't want to see that much. Like a new trailer was all people wanted going into this game, and maybe a demo. But knowing that it's a day long, no time confirmation of how long this will be.
And plus, even if people want to see it then, because it's the first. It's essentially like we've seen gameplay, which is the first like extended gameplay reveal. But then after that, if there are people who want to see 5 hours of Zelda this year at E3, great. Then they don't want to see any more until the game's out. Like, that's the bigger problem.
And they're not going to see any more until the game's out. I'm willing to bet you that right here.
I would, honestly, I would watch, as a Zelda fan, I would watch 30 minutes, no problem. I'd love to see, the fighting demos. And it's going to be a small part of the overall experience. So, like, I'm hoping that it will be insightful, great interviews with some great new footage, but not a seriously long playthrough of this game and only of this one game.
Well, and all signs seem to point to that, which is worrisome. I mean, last week when we talked about this, we all in this room thought, well, okay, so Zelda's the only playable game. Surely they're going to say something else. Surely they're going to have their digital event and Pokemon Sun and Moon is coming out this year.
I will
that's a
caveat
phenomenon. That game sells itself, but it still should have a presence at E3.
I mean, think about last year, right? During the Nintendo World Championships, which have nothing to do with this, they went, by the way, Earthbound Beginnings is coming to Virtual Console. It had nothing to do with the World Championships, but they just dropped it in the middle of the stream. Like, they can still do stuff like that.
Oh, you're still hopeful?
Yeah. I still think there could be, every 30 minutes, it's like, hey, by the way, while we set up the next area of Zelda, here's this producer to show you 10 minutes of whatever weird 3DS game.
If you're watching the video, the look on my face is, please, I hope so. Because the expectations just can't get any lower.
Yeah.
Like, I understand what's happening here, and I've said this on Twitter. This is a rough transition year. Clearly, the plug is getting pulled on Wii U. That is how this looks. It looks like Nintendo gave up at E3
They're sitting
because
it out.
they didn't have something to show at that time.
Again,
That's fine.
caveat, they have Zelda, right? Like, arguably their biggest game on this platform and probably one of the bigger ones on the next platform too. They have that, so I want to make sure that it doesn't come across as they're not there and they're not going to have a good show, because like when you walk into that booth and you see the crazy figures and like you get to play this game and the game plays well, that's all you need.
But that doesn't cover up how empty and how different this show is for them. And also, as Mr. I'm upset that Zelda got delayed and I'm not going to give them a pass, you sound like a very different person to me today.
No, because I've already come to terms with the fact that Zelda is the only game at the show. Like when you kept on saying like, well, maybe they'll show something else. Like I was thinking, no, I think
agreed with me.
No,
How
I
dare
think
you?
I think they have absolutely. No, I think they have absolutely given up. Like the only things that I would have expected from them on their digital stream would be Box Boy 2 and stuff like that, and Pokemon.
Okay, but we said that smaller stuff. That doesn't mean
that's
that you
thing.
agreed with me.
But that's not going to move the needle. It's not
Who
like
said it was.
Here's where I agree with you though. Like if you walk in and Zelda is awesome, if they nail it, do you really need Kirby Mass Attack and Mario Tennis and all of these things that even if they had 10 other games, would it matter?
No,
That's
they wouldn't.
fine.
And Box Boy is good, but
and I'm not disagreeing
either.
with either one of you. But when you consider people who bought this console, when you consider that, forget even up to December. Let's just go a little further. From January to March, what are you doing?
Yeah.
I'll tell you what you're doing. You're putting in an NX pre-order because what else is there?
Or you're buying a PS4.
And that is, to me, what is the more disappointing part of this.
Yeah.
Where I wasn't expecting through the moonshot announcements, some Mario Galaxy HD, nonsense. I don't care. All I wanted was to see an attempt to at least put this thing out to pasture in a nicer way, and they're not going to do this at the show. That doesn't mean they're going to do this ever. Not going to do it ever. Maybe after E3, Nintendo comes to its senses and says, here's 3 things that you should know about that you're going to be playing between now and when NX comes out. And to me, that would be nice, because for folks who bought this thing, how are you not supposed to feel burned right now?
Totally. I think the most exciting thing for me, looking in a positive direction, if we're considering Wii U dead and gone, is something you were talking to me about. Watching 6 hours of Zelda or whatever it is will tell us something about NX. Even if it's not overt, like watching the way that game works on Wii U will let us speculate pretty well about what NX will be. And I
don't
think that's
know.
really interesting.
I mean, like, yes, it could tell you something, right? Like, there are like rumors flying around about NX being cartridge based, and like when you're seeing Zelda and it has voice acting, huge vistas and everything, right?
Well,
like when you're seeing that, you're
vistas,
like, well, it would be very, very difficult to put this game on a cartridge. You know, even the bigger ones in a cost-effective fashion, right? Like that's a point
we were
you
arguing
made
about that this morning. Yeah.
And so it'll tell you something like that. But think about Twilight Princess. You could not look at Twilight Princess and predict what Wii was going to be. You know, and like this may be a similar situation where they never planned to put this game on NX and use whatever the MacGuffin is. And
if there's a MacGuffin.
Yeah, if there's a MacGuffin, it might, it's
right.
a tongue sensor? Ooh.
It could be. Well, if you're interested in going to E3, Nintendo's doing a contest over at e3.nintendo.com. You might be a lucky person that gets picked. You should check it out. Also, the website has cool Zelda art, which at the end of the day,
is really what we care about.
Yeah, you're just going to stare at it and shed one tear until E3 rolls around. But it's going to be fun. I have nothing but excitement to see. I'm nothing but excited to see that game in action. I cannot wait.
And that's the
I'm
funny
only
thing.
disappointed that it's the only thing.
That's the thing is I'm going to complain every day up until E3 about how they don't have anything but Zelda. And then I'm going to get there and I'm going to see Zelda and I'm going to shut up because I'm going to hopefully just be really impressed
14 seconds of Zelda or whatever at E3 2014.
Exactly.
Think of it, us all lose our minds.
I mean, think about it this way. If Rockstar went to E3 and showed you a new Grand Theft Auto, you wouldn't complain that they didn't show you any of the other games, right? Like, that's how
not
I
the same
feel.
situation.
Like, I am really excited about Zelda. I can't wait to see it. I am okay with it. But at the same time, it's disappointing that the Wii U ends like this, and that the 3DS has become such an afterthought that it doesn't even deserve a mention at the show.
That's where I'm coming from. When you use Rockstar as an example, no offense, I see that apples to oranges because Rockstar doesn't have a platform that they put games on, whereas this one does. And again, this is signs of a rough transition. Hopefully, one day we'll get to hear more about it. I wouldn't be surprised if I don't know, if you tried to even ask someone from Nintendo if they just jumped through a warp pipe to get away. Like, I don't want to answer that.
Just a smoke bomb?
Yeah,
I mean, the 3DS point, that's really interesting. That hadn't even occurred to me. That is crazy. This is virtually means no 3DS games there.
There is stuff announced, though, right? There's Rhythm Heaven Mega Mix, there's Monster Hunter Generations, there's Kirby Finding Robobot, there's Pokemon Sun and Moon. That's for easily, Robobot. There's stuff.
There's also another event that happens at the same time as E3. And that's our buddies at Apple, right, are going to have an event. I would not be surprised to see some Nintendo products showing there.
No.
You know, like that may send too strong of a message where, you know, like where Nintendo would be worried about it sounding like they gave up on their platforms that are supporting this.
That wouldn't happen.
Let's face it, they need some sort of way to get the word out to, you know, investors and everyone, like what their new Fire Emblem and Animal Crossing games are.
I don't see that happening at WWE. Why would Nintendo pull out of E3 and then advertise
they didn't pull out at E3.
Well, they didn't pull out, but they didn't show up the way they have in the past.
Well, no, but if their biggest products are the Zelda game and the two mobile games, ignoring Pokemon now.
Yeah, but you don't have to promote mobile. Mobile exists in a world where you don't have to promote it until it's available because you want people to get the impulse buy.
Those events are not for consumers, though. That event is for the industry. That is for investors. And like Nintendo needs to regain some face with their investors, right?
So we've talked about this on the show before.
Wait till the next gets delayed till
so does
next
DNA.
November.
I mean, I would assume DNA is some degree of saying some of that.
That's a good point. I don't know if they went over the financials, but I guess, and you can close this out if you want, but the last thing I would say to you is just that I don't see that happening. I see if Fire Emblem and Animal Crossing, when they're ready, I think that has the potential to show up at a future Apple event. I don't think it shows up at one that's happening the same week as E3. Because that sends a bad message to the people who bought Nintendo platforms.
Well, not if Miyamoto stands up there and says, right now we're showing The Legend of Zelda on the Wii U at E3, but
Apple
we're
would
also
never
working
let
on
that.
this.
No way.
Don't underestimate like the powerful statement
I will
that it
bet
sends.
you right here on this show that does not happen. Stake bet right here.
Yeah,
Do you want
I'm not
a new iPhone 7?
I'm not confident enough.
All right, fine.
I'm just dreaming, man.
I love you to death, man. All right, let's move forward then. Apple stuff aside. Andrew, you have been to PAX East, this wonderland of fans, community, excitement. You saw a lot of folks who admire and love IGN. You were at a really awesome party, but you also played Tokyo Mirage Sessions, which I need someone to tell me what this game is, because as I should know a little more myself just based on what I do, but I don't.
It appears the only thing he hates more than this game, or the prospects of this game, is Dark Souls 2. So yeah, we'd love to hear a little bit more.
What are you
that.
talking about?
Sorry.
I don't even know what that meant.
Keep going.
The game is super fun. It is not at all what I thought it was. I think every trailer I saw, you know, they showed it, what was it, last E3? They showed that completely in Japanese trailer that no one really understood unless you spoke Japanese, obviously, not even subtitled. And I think I thought this was a rhythm game somehow from that. I think the Pop Idol stuff made me think this was some kind of rhythm-based thing. It is absolutely not. It is a Shimigami Persona-style turn-based RPG with free-roaming elements in real parts of Japan.
So very much like a Persona game.
It really is. The twist.
Shin Megami, I guess, also has that setting. I apologize. Go ahead.
Yeah, no. I mean, totally. It's more Shin Megami than Persona, I would say, because it doesn't have the social link elements. But in terms of like the Demon or Persona collecting, that's the twist. That's the Sharp FE. Those are called Mirages, and they're Fire Emblem characters. Okay. So the main character's Mirage, or Persona, basically, is Chrom. And you get Fire Emblem weapons, and there's a weapon triangle, and that part of it, it's a little light. I don't think it's really a true crossover. So
it's not a strategy RPG, you wouldn't define it as, right? Because that's what Fire Emblem is to everyone.
No, yeah, it is not a proper Fire Emblem game. It's more to Fire Emblem elements that have been woven into SMT. Okay. So you can chain attacks together. There is a strategic element to it because basically you put these combo. The title actually weirdly makes sense once you play it in a convoluted way. There are combos that are called sessions, which you string together, and those are essentially like you can get like an 8-move session or a 10-move session, which are chains with your party members, and not just the active party members, but everybody that you've recruited. And so the way it works is if you have the name of your attack is like Dragon Lance, and someone else, they have an attack called like Lance Push. The Lance and the Lance, so one attack ending with Lance, one attack beginning with Lance, connect, and you're essentially weaving attacks together, and you're capitalizing on enemies' weaknesses and your strengths, and it's all the Shin Megami and Persona elements. So basically, you'll have a weapon that's imbued with Agi, which is fire, and someone else will be weak to that, and you'll attack them and use sort of that Fire Emblem style of like strategically chaining attacks together, but it's super light. I mean, this is way more Shin Megami heavy than Fire Emblem.
But to you, from what you played, by the way, I meant Darksiders too. I confused you with Dark Souls, didn't
I? Yeah, I was like, what are you doing?
Jose loves Dark Souls. That's all he talks about.
Yeah. Off mic.
Even the third. No. But from what you played, it felt more like a full-fledged RPG. Like when you see it in trailers, it looks more like this kind of glitzy, kind of very music-heavy showy.
Yeah, or even cutscene heavy. Like I feel like every other scene I've seen is just some dance session. Almost.
Yeah,
so I'm like, what's happening?
And that's what's crazy. Like there are literally in the middle of battle, if you've leveled up your relationships with a partner well enough,
you launch a music video.
You literally launch a music video.
Oh wait, I guessed.
Yeah, no, that's exactly what. Like, so I'm playing this with Zach, and we chained together an ad-lib performance.
God save us.
Which was just a 2-minute music video. It's set to a J-pop song, and it's like just the weirdest thing. Like it's definitely a niche game. Don't get me wrong. And I think if you aren't into pop idols or if you're not into JRPGs, you're really not going to like this game. But I think if you are an SMT Persona fan, if you want a little bit of Fire Emblem fan service, and if you're willing to like try something weird, I think this could be good.
Well, that's the question though. Like if you are, Fire Emblem is a strategy JRPG, right? Like, but it feels different from like a real JRPG. Like it's not a game that if you're a Fire Emblem fan, you're a fan of kind of like the relationship building. It's probably still going to be a different experience, right? Like
it's the relationships are so much less than a Persona game, or definitely less than a Fire Emblem game. Okay. It's more of the typical JRPG thing. Like you're recruiting party members as you go, but it seems to be leaning way far away from the actual like deep like getting married or anything like that. Like there aren't like social links like in Persona, but you do have kind of that like typical old school JRPG mentality of going through dungeons, fighting bosses, all that stuff, turn-based attacks, just with kind of a weird twist to it.
So I guess one question I have though is that Shin Megami Tensei, or Mega 10 as some people love to call that series, has a reputation for not holding back against you as a player. Like Shin Megami Tensei 4, for example, is a notoriously difficult game. Like all of them are. Where does this fall?
I mean, like we only played about an hour, and it was
definitely
lose it all,
or you felt like it was just an easier demo?
It's funny that you say that because basically we were in the easy demo parts, and we kept saying like, oh, like we're way overpowered, and then they loaded up a save from later in the game where a boss just destroyed us. Like it wasn't even. It was we attacked once, and then they chained together like a 40+ move session that just wiped out our party.
Mega 10 don't play. Like if you are weak to lightning, and Mega 10 will chain 10 lightning attacks just to like, oh, you're weak against that? Let me show you what happens. And then you just oh no.
I see you're carrying water Pokemon.
Yeah, exactly.
I got something for you.
It is it does do two nice JRPG things, which are if your party leader dies, you can keep fighting like as long as somebody's alive. It's not like the kind of game where the party leader dies and the whole team dies. And then also you have a shared item pool. So as long as you have a couple, revives left or whatever, like you can keep reviving people. But yeah, oh man, did we brutally die. I think we were just underleveled, to be fair, but yeah.
So you're smitten, man. Like it's,
you're
the world's biggest Persona fan, right? Like that's fair to say?
Sure.
Yeah.
At least 3 and 4. Yeah. I mean, and that's what's funny is I feel like this weird, it's interesting, right? Because this comes out in June, which to me, if you are a big Persona fan, and today, coincidentally, they announced that comes out in Japan September 15th, which means in the US, probably Q1 2017 is honestly my guess, maybe very late in the year. But if you're waiting for a Persona game, you have to wait a while. Whereas this will be out this June, which feels like a really good way to kind of scratch that itch while also having something to play on Wii U. The one caveat to that, though, is that Shin Megami Tensei for Apocalypse is also coming west. So there is a proper SMT game coming sometime this year as well on 3DS. And that's what's interesting to me about this is, I don't know, I want to see more of it because I'm curious to know. We played an hour and it was really, really, really intriguing to me. I definitely enjoyed it. But I don't know yet, right? I don't know if it's worth going up against instead of a full-fledged SMT game that is probably going to be better.
So I think Nintendo did a really good job with Xenoblade Chronicles X of marketing that game so people understood what it was. There was a constant stream of videos that kept showing up on Nintendo's YouTube channel that would explain different aspects of how gameplay unfolded, how to customize mechs, how to do all that stuff. I feel like this game needs that desperately.
Yes, I agree.
Somebody, if they're not working on it already, you should be doing this because to me, this has always been presented as this weird J-pop music video.
It looks like Hatsune Miku or something
exactly.
like that. Right?
Yeah, that's why I thought it was a rhythm game.
Yeah, diva kind of thing. And right now, I think the people who care clearly care. People have constantly reached out on me to me on Twitter saying, why aren't you excited for this? It's well, they haven't shown me anything I should be excited about. The J-pop angle doesn't work with me unless there's a substance there. There's a game there.
They need a gameplay
and I didn't
trailer.
see that in anything that they've really shown. Even the gameplay trailers, though, were really light on what the game was. Right?
100%. Yeah, there was the very first trailer was an open world trailer for this game that no one understood what it was well enough to know what they were seeing.
And they did that twice. They did it at an April Nintendo Direct, and then they did that again at the digital event last year. And I remember us all stunned in the room, what do you even do with this?
And even as someone who was curious about this game, I had no idea what was happening. That's why, look, it's hard because the game will not have English dub. It'll only be in Japanese with subtitles. So I do think that obviously makes it hard for them to try and hit a mainstream audience because all the trailers by default will be in Japanese in terms of spoken word. But I agree, they need a good 5-minute, hey, here are the ABCs of what this game is. And I think that would go a long way. And that's why, I wrote a piece that's on IGN about it where I tried to just basically regurgitate what our demo was, where they were basically here's what this game is. Because I think that's the fundamental problem is I totally agree with you. I think I had the benefit of sitting down with 3 Nintendo employees for an hour where they literally explained step by step what it was. And I think that's kind of what they need to do publicly. I think they need to come out and say, hey, here's what it is.
You tuned out the moment you saw J-pop, right?
That's not true. I mean,
you need some chocolate.
It depends on. Oh yeah, I need some baby metal. That's not J-pop. Well, I guess it is partially.
It's J-pop metal.
No,
pop.
So I'm really into a lot of things from Japan, but it has to grab me right away. It's got to have sort of a catchy rhythm and a catchy tune, and this didn't. I remember the first song, I complained about it on this show, and people were like, "How did you not like that?" I'm like, "Because it was not good. It did not appeal to me in any way. It didn't tell me what it was."
It is definitely very Japan heavy. Even aside from obviously the Japanese language track, it's the music is very much J-pop, and there's a lot of it. So if you really hate that music, you're gonna hear a lot of it. And then
I'm sure there's tracks that I'm gonna love. It's just. I don't know. I almost wonder, too, because Xenoblade fell into that problem, too, where if you played Xenoblade, the Central Hub Town song was awful. It was so
and you have to always hear it.
And then it just goes into this, guitar riff, and you're like, wait, who invited Carlos Santana? What is going on? It was really weird.
Yeah, that makes it hard. I mean, I'm very curious to see more. We'll have more in IGN. We'll see what happens. I don't know. This game comes out right after E3, so it's it's something on Wii U, and I hope it's good. I would really love for this game to actually be sort of a cult hit because I feel like Wii U needs it at the moment.
Definitely. No, I agree. And I was really glad to hear when you came back from this demo how excited you were because that woke me up. I was like, okay, well, now I need to care about this, clearly. Andrew being our resident Persona emissary, I would call you.
I'll take it.
You're an ambassador.
That is what it says on my business cards.
Yep. He was able to do that. All right. Do you still have your meeting at 3? You gotta.
Yeah, I sure under a meeting.
Okay. Well, so we're gonna take a break then. Let's take a quick break, and when we come back, we have more to discuss. So don't go anywhere.
Listen.
And welcome back. Jose Otero here with Per Schneider. We're a man down. Andrew. But you can find him, ladies and gentlemen, especially ladies, at Garfep on Twitter.
And on, if you listen to Beyond, our podcast on PlayStation, Andrew is on there all the time, right?
Truth.
There's a YouTube channel for that one too. Just youtube.com/ Is it Beyond or Podcast Beyond? One of the two.
Yeah, it's one of the two.
Yeah.
We should know
Podcast
this.
Beyond.
Okay. Per.
Beyond.
You and I have been playing a game that we never thought we would be.
God.
Well, I shouldn't say we never thought we'd be this excited about, but we clearly weren't expecting.
What are you talking
to
about?
be-
I was not excited about it. You told me about the name. I was like, oh.
Oh, yeah. No, that's true. So those watching, listening, this is all truth. I went to Per's desk. I said I tried the demo for this game that was made by Game Freak called Pocket Card Jockey. Not the easiest 3 words to say in succession, by the way. But
My son thought it was like a dirty joke, the title.
so the funny thing is, this game, because it's such a weird and abstract concept, I think it does a great job of presenting itself. To give you the quick summary, it is horse racing meets solitaire.
Which sounds like, come on, that combination, unless you're into horse racing or you're into cards to that degree, that sounds like a disaster. That does not sound fun to me.
And yet it is.
And somehow you had to have a little bit more faith because it is Game Freak, the makers of Pokemon. And it's really, I mean, it's charming, it's clever, and it's really addictive. They did such a nice job with such a simple concept. And I don't want to give away the story here, but it starts off and right away you're like, what the heck is this?
Yeah,
you know?
it does. It has a. I'll say a few things about it. There's a horse narrator called Off Course,
Yes.
who comes out to give you tips and advice. There is. I have to say though, I feel it's a little chatty at the start, and I think people need to go in knowing that. Like the dialogue is charming, but there's a lot of it.
They let you skip it though. Did you notice like the post after the race, you'll get all these like, here are all the things you did wrong. You can just hit X and you get them out of the way.
You can, but when you're learning the mechanics of the game and when they're doing the
beginning.
story part of the game, there is a lot of text to it. And I don't want to make that sound like that is a terrible thing, but it is. When you just want to jump into what something is, that can come with sort of a.
I get it, but it's new text. It's not like, Splatoon having to listen to the character
hey,
say
you got
the
a
same
blue
lines,
rupee.
right? No, it is new text and it's part of the story.
It's
but
good,
what
well-written text.
So what they did is like basically, you get a horse in the beginning. You can have a young horse under 3 years old. You can get an older horse later. You can have multiple horses. You can put them out to pasture to breed and all these things. Like all these things where the game expands more and more and more to become bigger. And then the actual race mechanics are based on the game Solitaire, like the card game. Slightly changed, like, you have to put down cards in succession, but it can be a smaller card or a higher card, and you got to go fast because there's a little race timer at the bottom.
Yeah, and they're timing you the whole time, but they time you in different phases. So when a race starts, you're playing Start Solitaire.
Yep.
And basically, you're trying to clear a smaller section of solitaire cards to try and reach the cards in the back row because they spell out the word start with an exclamation. The idea being that you want to find the letter card that has the most orbs on it. And because
most power,
you'll get the most power off of the line to start the race. That one's brutally quick. Like you have to get it fast, and if you
have to spot it. You have to spot which card it is when they get put down.
Oh,
Did
you're
you notice
kidding?
that?
That's it? Okay, I was wondering how that works.
So you see the cards, they fly in really fast, and you're like, oh, that one had 5. And then you got to kind of go like, okay, I need a 9, and you keep on flipping through the cards.
So then
very, very clever.
You go through phases, and then during each phase of the race, each leg of the race, you have to clear a game of solitaire. Depending on the stakes or the caliber of the race, if it's higher tier, the timer on your game of solitaire goes faster. They are tracking how long it takes you to get through the whole race because that's like a high score mechanic. I think you trade that through Street Pass.
Yep.
It's really exciting, even though it's kind of, and I don't want to take full credit for this because my roommate kind of expressed it this way, but he's like, it's kind of like when you go to the carnival and use a water gun to shoot a target. that moves the horse like faster across the. I don't know what they call those games, but it's a carnival
horsey.
game. Yeah, but it's sort of a carnival game. No, but you know what I'm saying. Like you're doing a completely separate action that has nothing to do with horse racing, and in this one you're doing that, but you're playing solitaire in order to do it.
The conceit, I mean, the story setup for this game is pretty awesome. They explain why it's solitaire. I'm not going to give it away here, but then once the race starts, so you clear a table of cards, and it has all these kind of like funny animations, like these flames shoot up to your like horse, and it changes the mood color from like bad to good depending on what you do. If you have a lot of misses, it changes the mood of the horse to worse. It'll perform worse. But then you actually get a field view that expands where the horses are, and their icons, and you can draw a line of where you want your horse to run, like whether inside or outside, and then these icons that come in from the right that you can collect that give you additional powers. But you have to plan ahead where like you have to get into this comfort zone that will give you a lot of energy, and you can say, you know what, I'm going to go low because there are fewer horses. I don't want to bump into anybody. The way it all ties together, this sounds crazy, but the way it all ties together, it's just really fun. There's a betting aspect to it, like you betting, hey, my strategy of staying out of the path of these horses is going to work out, or I'm going to go in the thick of it.
Sometimes that doesn't work, and the thick of it comes up to where you are, and you get hit. And also, every horse has a different type of skill. So, for example, the first horse you get, I forgot what they call it. I think they just call it first rate.
I just renamed them to Flying Fart and stuff, like you should.
Nice. I named
horse
mine,
names have to be great.
I think I named mine Huffing Hamilton or something.
That's pretty good.
But anyway, but the first horse you get has a skill that it rides. It gains more skill points or rides comfortably if it's following the lead horse. So this is not a horse that is meant to break away from the pack at the start. So you try to get your position between solitaire decks as you clear them. Now, if you're still with us, and I hope you are, we're not crazy. Like this game is very good. And one thing I do want to point out is, have you seen this game's like weird don't quit a race?
Oh yeah. The warning?
So can you recap the warning? Yeah, if you quit during a race, it's considered an L, and you lose. But it also, I thought I misread it, and I thought it also meant I couldn't close the clamshell, and I was freaking out. I'm like, I'm on the train. I gotta get off at the next stop.
Good question. Does it pause it?
So I made sure to clear the solitaire deck before I tried. So I'm not sure. I may have misread the text, but I thought it said the same condition for if you tried to close the lid during a game of solitaire. And I wonder if it was just them trying to make sure you're not cheating or something like that. But I'm not entirely sure. I could be making this up. This part I could be crazy about. Yeah. But the game itself being good, like if you trust what we're saying.
Trust in me.
Yeah, trust. Like this thing is a lot better than you think it is. They're selling it for $6.99 on the Nintendo 3DS eShop.
Totally worth it. And again, I'm not a fan of solitaire card games. My wife, my daughter, they all play it. I always just look at them like they're crazy. I'm not a big fan of horse racing, but this is really tense. It's so well done, and like it can be really nerve-wracking when you're trying to get the start, and you're like, I gotta get this freaking card.
It's fast.
And it also has this wonderful Hannibal moment of where I love it when a plan comes together and you clear the entire table and your horse gets like powered up, and flames come out and rides towards the camera. It's all like cutesy graphics.
This is all true what he said. The horse is in flames.
But the one thing, first of all, it does not have 3D. Yeah, which is kind of funny, right?
Like a lot of 3DS.
They keep on doing this with the smaller
games,
downloadable games, as if
Boy.
it costs as if there's that much work involved in making these games and display in 3D. I don't even get it.
Maybe it's just testing. Maybe it's just that extra layer of
or they're all going to go to mobile. Or they're just not even going to bother.
So Pokemon Shuffle did. Yeah. Box Boy won't. I don't think so. But this game could work on mobile.
This would be a great game for Japan and mobile.
But mobile always weirds me out because
you can't pause. That's the only problem.
Take a game like, there's a game that I really enjoyed. That was a turn-based strategy game. It came out on 360 first. Yep. It's called Skulls of the Shogun.
Yep.
Love the art style. Love everything about that game. That game came out on mobile. First it was Windows Phone exclusive, which was part of their deal with Microsoft. Then it came to iOS, sold nothing.
Yeah.
It was just, no one cared. And it was a good game, and no one cared.
Yeah, but think about the games that sell well on mobile. Like, they either fit into a trend, and like Angry Birds and Birds were definitely a trend. Minecraft and blocks were a trend, and zombies were a trend, right? Like you have to fall kind of in those trend lines a lot of ways, or you start your own. And
like Plague Inc.
And I think, I think it's difficult for a game like that to have an identity on mobile because it already has an identity elsewhere. And I wouldn't say it really kind of fits that broad audience. But this horse racing game with like cutesy looking horses, solitaire, like I think this is a shoe in. Like you put the
a horseshoe in, would you say?
Oh
my god.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
but yeah, no, this game is good. Totally took us by surprise. If you have a heart and you trust us, do check it out.
Yeah, $7 US if you're in other territories. Sorry, I don't have that price for you, but you should definitely check it out.
It's £11.
And moving on, before I go into the question block, I want to ask you, did we talk about really the digital event looks like it's shelved this year?
Did we talk about that? Yes, we said.
We did, right?
Yeah, like I mean, it's
all signs say yes.
No, what they did is they're creating the Zelda demo for people who can't be there. There is no real digital event. It's not a tune in and see what's going to happen next. It's like now it's time to look at Zelda.
Or tune in and see what you're going to be playing in the next 6 to 8 months.
It is not the equivalent of a kind of lighthearted press conference or anything like it. It is a Zelda demo. It's a Zelda Direct is what it is. Okay. And that is, to anyone who is into that series, that is pretty damn good. But it's not going to give you a lot of variety.
All right. So then before we go to the question block, we have a quick request from a friend of the show. So happy birthday to Chris Bradley, who is described as a loyal Nintendo fan and lover of Zelda, from his partner in crime, Beth. Beth emailed us and said Chris would love a shout out, and we're not gonna do this often. We might do your bar mitzvahs or your weddings, but I don't know. But we'll see. But definitely want to throw that out there for Chris Bradley.
I can play a mean Casio synth.
Can you?
No.
Oh yeah, you have one.
No, I don't have Casio. I'm Korg. Jesus.
Okay, and on to the question block, everyone's favorite question segment on Nintendo Voice Chat, where we take your questions and try to turn around and answer in 4 minutes.
We've been going for 4 minutes. So long.
We haven't done it for so long. I forgot,
which
is really bad. Just like I forgot where my timer is with my amazing Luigi sound effects. But yeah, so we got a bunch of emails in from last show. Thank you, everyone who did email us after last show. Our first email comes from David. And he says he had an email talking a lot about just the Legend of Zelda in a more specific way, but he has a question at the end of this, which was, since I can't get the real thing, when I can't get the real thing, I love to play Zelda clones to fill in the void. He's a big fan of Okami, Beyond Good and Evil, Darksiders 1 and 2.
Oh, look at that, Jose.
Sorry,
How
David,
weird.
you should not be advocating for those. 3D Dot Heroes. I think Darksiders is okay. I'm not a huge fan. Yeah. And Cameo, to name a few. Do you have any suggestions for other games from this gen or last gen that might be close enough to a Zelda type of game to try? You're playing one right now.
The Witcher.
In The Witcher 3.
Yeah, The Witcher 3. I mean, it doesn't have that kind of... It doesn't have that control perfection. Like, I always love the way the Zelda games feel, and especially the way the combat feels. And I love the item progression. Like, you really only find that in the Zelda games and the Metroid games, or in your Arkham cities. And you know, like, I would say the Batman Arkham series, very close to Zelda for sure.
Good one.
Witcher 3, it is more RPG and stats building driven. It's fantastic. I mean, like, the controls are not good. Let's face it. They're not awesome controls. On PC, they're much better, but on consoles, it feels a little sloppy. But man, the side stories are so amazing. Like, every story that game tells in a side story is better than like major games, main stories.
And I want to definitely echo Pear on that one, where I do feel like Witcher's world is a very interesting one. It's very well presented. The way you wander into quests is really well done. You're not getting temples and dungeons and like the kind of relic in the way you would in a Zelda type of experience. But you are getting, in replacement of that, some of the best side quests you'll probably ever play. I think the main quest in Witcher 3 is lame. I've said that before on the show.
It's a follow-a-person quest. Very simple setup. Yeah,
it's just not... It pales so much to the other stories that you learn about within that world. And these stories require like some really cool research. Like one of the first ones you get, and we may have talked about this before on the show, but you get a quest where you're investigating a curse, find out about, betrayal, someone who was killed on their wedding day, and this whole arc of, well, what is this creature this person turned into? And you actually have to do research, go through like little notes and things, and you eventually land on, well, how do I kill this thing?
Yeah.
And that's one thing that world does really well, is that it is just like Game of Thrones feels like it has history. I feel like The Witcher 3 does a good job of convincing you it has
does.
history.
And there's racism, right? Like there's there are these people who are they're the people who hate witchers. They're the people who hate elves. They're people who hate like mages, and like it's a really interesting world, and it is a fantastic game, absolutely worth your time. But I would say Arkham is closer to a Zelda experience. Like has these kind of item gates, right, where like you get your grapple hook type equivalent, and then you can access new areas. Also, Mad Max. I don't know if you've ever played that.
I haven't played that.
Mad Max is like car Zelda. Like
Okay.
you literally like your goal is to rebuild your car.
There was
so
Car
it has
Zelda
this,
and Mario Kart.
So it has this really cool it has this really cool goal, right? Like it makes the ride the center point. But then you're exploring this big open world, and you are fighting people. It's again like control wise nowhere near Zelda, but a really interesting setup too.
So
a bunch of others too.
I want to say, and this isn't the one-to-one comparison to Zelda that maybe some of the other games you've mentioned are, right? Or even that he mentioned, Okami, Beyond Good and Evil, Dark
Tomb Raider too, of course.
Tomb Raider
is closest.
Tomb Raider, Rise of the Tomb Raider, and he has an Xbox One. He mentioned that. I was gonna say Dark Souls 3. If you're a first-time player, Dark Souls 3 is probably the friendliest Dark Souls I think I've seen yet. Just in terms of that, it isn't like, so Bloodborne is a good From Software, the developer, 101 type game. Like it's a game where you learn a lot of how the way I think From Software games work. But the walk to the first boss is a really long one, and when you get smashed into the blob of goo that normally happens if you don't know how you're fighting. The walk back is so long, it's annoying. Like it's upsetting even. But the way Bloodborne was intended for you to get around that was you were supposed to find the shortcuts to make it a faster trip.
Yeah.
Dark Souls 3 gets rid of a lot of that, and it just kind of filters to the more essential. And even though it's not a Zelda-type dungeon, it feels like one to me. Not so much that items and everything is hidden behind that kind of progression, but that you want to know what's around the next corner because it could be so cool. And just the way combat's set up, combat feels really good. I love it. But it's also one of those games that every time you see a new enemy, it's a guessing game of what does this guy do, and am I in a lot of trouble right now? I would just say check that out, David. All right. So our next question comes from Christina. And Christina says, recently it's been reported that NX would not be sold at a loss. What exactly does this mean for the hardware? Will the quality of the NX suffer in order to keep it at a certain price range? Or will it be like the PS3 launch, where it was an outrageous launch price? I want to think that the console wouldn't be too expensive since Nintendo aims to cater towards a larger audience. However, with the curveballs Nintendo has been throwing us lately, she just doesn't know. So this is tough because I just don't think there's enough information to really tell us what. So she's referring to that president and CEO of Nintendo, Tatsumi Kimishima, said to investors, we will not sell this console at a loss. Fun fact, Wii U was sold at a loss when it debuted, which is very un-Nintendo. Nintendo usually builds profit into every piece of hardware sold, unlike most console manufacturers who will sell at a loss because they expect to make the money back in video games.
It's the shaver razor blade model, right? Like the shaver is cheaper than the razor blade in the end. You're going to make all your money on the blades, the games, right? Not on the device. But yeah, with the Wii U, it was interesting because the Wii U didn't have an expensive hard drive in it either, and so like the PlayStation, the Xbox One, the manufacturers definitely lose more money until later in the life cycle when that price finally catches up, or they'll release simpler versions, right? Like revisions of the machine. Like Microsoft in the past has tried a machine without a hard drive, right? For more casual use, didn't work out. But chipsets become cheaper and they're able to condense things and drop some things they don't need. But yeah, this is interesting because, first of all, smaller, like making things smaller can be more expensive sometimes.
Always
too, right?
more
and like
expensive.
We've talked about the theory that the NX could be like a handheld console bridge. There's definitely cost in creating something that has a built-in screen, which you wouldn't have with a console, right? with
motion accelerometers,
bigger batteries that would only be found, like, the Xbox came without controller batteries, for example. Those are all little places where you can save on something where with a handheld machine you can't, right? Yeah. You have to bake it in. So that's the big question, is what the NX is. First of all, we need to know that, right? Yeah. They can definitely supersize. They can make a more powerful console than the Wii U, even with the disk drive, and sell it, and not make a loss, and it can be impressive.
Yeah.
But that gets mighty complicated when you're talking about a really beefy handheld.
Yeah, and just when you think back to, like, I don't know, I can't remember how much I paid for my old cell phones, but I know what I pay for a smartphone, what I could be paying for a smartphone without a subsidy.
It's like $700, $600
is insane. You would have told me in the year 2005, 6, or 4, whatever year I got my first cell phone, you're going to pay $700 for a new phone. I was going to say, absolutely not. That's insane.
Yeah.
But the reason I feel like we don't feel like they're as expensive is because when you got a new contract, you'd get a subsidy, you'd be paying it over time. The company, basically AT&T, puts that money up for you until you pay it off.
Maybe Nintendo will do that. Maybe they'll do subsidized. You got to subscribe.
I don't know.
Look, if Nintendo...
What's going to keep the cost down? That's the question.
Well, no, but
right?
if Nintendo releases, it's the virtual console subscription plan. Like, every month you get like 5 virtual console games. You buy this console and it's subsidized, and you buy it cheaper, but you're in a 2-year plan, right?
Sure.
Like, that's one way to offset costs. I don't think they have the guts to.
Well, it's not just guts. I just don't think they're that generous. This is the company that when you're buying virtual console games on your Super Nintendo, no offense, guys, I know you're listening, but you're charging people a second time for games that they bought on the other platform.
Right.
And I feel like Sony and other companies and even Apple has figured out a way to incentivize you for when, okay, you bought the Apple TV. Hey, you bought this game for like $10 on your iPhone. Guess what? It works on your TV. Right. Oh man, if Hearthstone showed up on my Apple TV, I actually might start playing it again because I stopped. But I would, just out of the convenience of it, be like, oh, it's right there, versus like playing it on a computer or something else.
But yeah, it's a really good question. Like, it is, but it could point at a couple of things, right? It could point again that there's no hard drive in the box. It could point at the fact that, hey, it's not going to be a lot more powerful than an Xbox One or a PlayStation 4, right? Mm-hmm. It's definitely going to point at the fact that it's not going to be 4K, right? So there's some conclusions you can draw.
Absolutely. All right, we're doing pretty good on this. We're pretty much rounding out points as the timer goes. Gong.
Yeah.
Next question comes from Alfonso, who says, and this was part of a larger email. Sorry, Alfonso, I didn't read the whole thing. But how do you want Mario's debut on NX to be? Mainly, if you think the series should go back to its pixel-based platforming roots, a la, Mario World, or even take Mario Maker, with a new art direction, or retain the new Super Mario Brothers platform aesthetic, or maybe even try something new entirely. Then he brings up Mario World and Mario 3 are regarded as the best games ever, and I personally think Nintendo could draw inspiration from them and put together a game with a similar vibe on NX. Interesting thing you bring up, Alfonso, just because I think that ultimately Mario 3 and Mario World have lived on in every 3D, every Mario game to date, I feel, has pulled something from those games. Maybe not the direct power-ups, right? Maybe not the cape and the raccoon leaf, but the approaches those games took of, here's a really cool level idea, here's Kerbo, shoot, and we're not going to do it again. Like, those ideas were born through those games. And I feel like World especially has a lot of just very elegant one and done, here's a really cool thing, or here's a really hard thing, or there's a level where you don't even have to touch the ground. Like, it's all about like getting that P, I forgot the power up that inflates you like a balloon and you try to float along. Personally, I would like, so we haven't had a new 3D Mario game since 3D World, which, if you've been keeping score like we have, was 2013. The same year that we got A Link Between Worlds. It's been a while. For 3D Mario, it's been a while. We just got Mario Maker last year. Yes.
Whoa.
Yes.
What happened?
It has been a while.
And that was, to me, though, 3D World is not the same as Mario 64, Sunshine, Mario Galaxy.
No, and to a lot of people,
they're
it's
more.
Not, right?
They have very fixed perspective. They're not immersive exploration games.
Yeah, and we always. I feel like we always run into this wall every time we bring up 3D World, because it's important to point that out, right? It is not like the exploration-based Mario games.
That's why I like it less.
But it did take more chances on power-ups. It did make more chances on like really cool stuff, like the double cherry.
The
catsuit is the coolest new power-up I think they've had in a very long time.
It's a really good game. there's no question about it. But I feel like special tingling when I get like a Mario 64 style game.
Yeah.
And that I would include both Galaxies and Sunshine.
But
Sunshine ultimately is the weakest of the bunch.
So
but,
I love
even
Galaxy.
That one.
Yeah, I do love Galaxy, but Galaxy had the lamest power-ups I think I've seen.
That's true.
A regular Mario was a more important part of that puzzle because he had to be so nimble to do so many things. Whereas the B Mario and Cloud Mario, like it just wasn't as special. It felt like you were more limited if you picked up an item. Fire Flowers, for example, or even Invincibility. Like everything just felt like it wasn't as strong. But level layouts were great. But I get what you're saying. I want a 3D Mario that takes whatever Galaxy was doing and whatever 64 was doing, which is the big open hub world kind of stuff, bring them together. Give me that space to explore again, and not just what you were doing in Galaxy, where it was this home hub central area that there just wasn't much to it.
And to me, a great Mario game has the variety of a Mario World or a Mario 3, where you have, you do have your underwater stage, and you have your, you've got your ice level, your snow level, and I always felt that Sunshine really limited itself, right, by having this island setting, and then not wanting to break with that setting in the sub levels and the bonus rounds. I mean, I love the little wood structures in the bonus rounds when you lose your water pack, but it just didn't feel as expansive as the other Mario games. So I would love that. I would love something that isn't like a one-trick pony.
Well, and that's the thing too. I wasn't a huge fan of Flood, like honestly, and I know that might be heresy to some, but I feel like Flood on one hand was a really great skill tool. Like there were certain types of jumps you can do with Flood on that you couldn't do without Flood. And there were certain like spin jumps and just really cool, like
very Zelda kind of puzzle solving tool.
To get the most out of it. But at the same token, I did feel like having to stop because I ran out of water was a pain. Like, okay, let me run over there. I got to pull all this water in. All right, now we can do what we need to do.
See, I ultimately still liked Flood, and I liked the break from convention to add that.
Yeah, it's a good idea.
Because that game did something really smart. It got you used to using Flood as a safety net when you're jumping with a little hover.
Oh, yeah.
And then they took it away in the bonus stages.
Yeah.
And you're suddenly reminded, like, oh my God, that's how it used to be. I had to be really careful with every jump.
Well, it's not even that's how it used to be. That's how it used to be times 10, because it was always an obstacle course of things moving where you could be like, remember where those villagers would just throw you through the air and you had to like hope you landed on something that was even resembling the ground. No, and I think Sunshine had its merits, but I was not a huge fan of Flood. I liked what it went for and I liked what it did, but that's not something I think I'd want to see again. But 3D World did remind me that power-ups can be really cool things, and I do want to see a 3D Mario game tackle them better because I think Galaxy didn't handle them very well.
I'd be happy with a mix of Galaxy and Sunshine. Super Mario Moonshine, give it to me.
Okay, so
I like how you don't even react anymore.
I don't. All right, this is our last question. This one comes from Bryce. And Bryce says, and this is a good one, thanks for emailing us, Bryce, and thanks to everyone who emailed us. If you want to email us on this show, email us at nvc@ign.com. Put question block in the subject line because that always helps. Some people like to put their subject line instead, but when I'm looking for questions in a last-minute effort, that always helps. And we'll try and answer it on the show. No promises that we will answer all of them, though, because some not so great.
And there are other places where you can ask questions that we may answer. Like, for example, if you go to IGN, you find the article that announces this podcast. We usually look at the comments there and answer, and we're making an effort to also answer some of the questions on the YouTube channel. But that's not the way to get the questions mentioned on the show. Use the email for that.
Yep. All right. So Bryce says, with the news of Mighty Number 9 finally going gold, I added the finally, it got me thinking about how different that phrase is today versus 10 years ago, or even 5 years ago. In the past, you had to have the game perfect, or at least he feels in the past you had to have the game perfect. I would argue, Bryce, that not every game was perfect when it shipped, but regardless, now we swim in day one patches and constant updates. And Nintendo has had examples of this, right? Pokemon X and Y, Splatoon, games that are updated. Smash Brothers even has had plenty of updates since it came out. More of something to think about, but I feel going gold in today's world doesn't mean much. Just because it means to him it's ready enough. Like it doesn't signal that it's really, really done. Yeah. what is the crew's thoughts on going gold? And if it really means the same nowadays, or just a business decision to get it out the door, which is a little cynical, I want to say, and work on a patch 2 or 3 months later. So, Bryce, I think that games, you're kind of a little bit missing the point. The games have successfully gotten bigger and bigger each generation, at least from a file size perspective, at least from scope and scale. I think that really devoted publishers and platform makers try to spend as much resources as they can trying to bug fix, trying to make sure that they catch everything when it goes out the door. But sometimes you're just not going to get everything, and you do have to ship. Now, I'm not trying to say it's okay, though, to ship a broken game. And I do feel like there is something to be said for when a game comes out day one, if I'm downloading a huge patch, that's not a good sign to the consumer, right? You're going to be worried, like, well, what am I getting here? And what did I just buy? And is this going to still be broken? And what if it is? I mean, you were talking about The Witcher earlier. There's times where that game broke. There's times where Skyrim breaks. There's times where Fallout breaks. And that, again, comes from just scope and scale. But I do want to say, I don't think games back in the day really shipped that perfect because people have found ways to break them. That's what speedruns are about. That's what all of those things are about. It was just harder to do, but I don't feel like any game is really perfect.
Yeah, and it's obviously hard to tell, right? Like, we may be getting the benefit of an extra 3 weeks development time that publishers back in the day didn't have, right? And so you could argue that, no, those games are improved. On the flip side, it's way harder to make a 3D open world game than it is a 2D side-scroller, right? Like, not to say that it's easy to make a side-scroller the quality of Super Metroid or Mario World, but it is, there is so much more potential for bugs when you're dealing with the third dimension and like these polygonal setups and these if-then statements of like, have you talked to the villager and what if you kill someone in the game, right? Like, it takes more testing. So I'm not against bugs. These bug fixes, I'm against bugs. I'm not against bug fixes and patches. I think it can be a real downer when you're excited to play a game and you plop it in and then it has to install and then it has to download like a multi-gig update. I think that's a pain in the butt, and that is a process that could be improved, right?
Yeah.
Like, can I download something earlier? Can I queue it? Or, can we finally move to a true digital system where we're pre-ordering a game, it preloads it, and it comes with a bug ready to play, rather than having to put a disc in, and with that come the whole concepts of like, you can't trade it then, or you can't share it with another machine in the house. Those are all things that we have to resolve.
And I want to take this a little further. I know we just called time on it and we're about to end the show, but look at when we didn't have the ability to do this. Smash Brothers Brawl basically was and even go back to Smash Brothers Melee, where players were basically using exploits in order to be able to move. I mean, I love my competitive Smash, but it's the truth, right? Wave dashing is not something that was I think intended as much as people took it and were able to take and run with. Take Brawl, which was a feature, could not be patched out because you couldn't patch games on Wii. Or even take Skyward Sword, which inevitably a bug did get found, and then the way to fix it was you had to mail your SD card to Nintendo in order to get that fixed. Like, of course, in the cartridge days, there are fewer examples of that, right? And fewer examples of sort of what could be considered the game-breaking bugs. But I think the complexity of making games has also changed just a lot.
Yeah, and then multiplayer, of course, just balancing, making sure it's a fun experience for a long time. Like Splatoon, if we still lived in the days of unpatchable games, right, it would be a completely different game now. And it's an awesome game now because they went back and they fixed little issues here and there, made sure that it was balanced. So the traditional going gold is gone, right? Like, it's no longer, you can no longer go gold. The majority of people will be able to download patches.
When gold always just means it's shipping. That's it. Like, it doesn't mean to me that it's ever done. I think no game in the current generation, at least, feels done. Yeah. All right.
True.
Well, there you have it. Thanks again, Bryce, for emailing us. That's really awesome. And thank you, everyone, for emailed us. And lastly, we're done. That's it. We got another show in the can. Thank you for listening to Nintendo Voice Chat. And there are a couple ways you can help us out. One, you can email us feedback at nvc@ign.com. You could also send us questions. Two, you can head on over to iTunes. I don't know if Google Play has a sort of a feedback system yet. I was looking around today. I didn't see anything like for rating and comments and things like that.
Yeah.
It's weird. Also, our show on there is broken. Like, our descriptions don't show.
That's not good.
Yeah, that's not good. And also, it's still using the old art. So we're looking into that. But regardless, head on over to iTunes, where you could leave us a show review, and we could always end up reading it on the air. And lastly, you can find us on Twitter. You can find Andrew Goldfarb, who is no longer here, but he used to be in this seat, at Garfep. You can find Per Schneider at
Per IGN.
And you can find myself, Jose_Otero on Twitter. Thank you very much for listening, and we'll be back next week with more Nintendo Voice Chat.
Oh, get the thing.